Yo, what up, everybody? It is Blake Meyer back again. I apologize. I was trying to get some of this live stuff situated since we are working on going live now. If you are in the live and you're watching this, it is not episode 2. I hate to break your heart. It is episode 22. I don't know what I'm talking about. And I even just retweeted it. I quote tweeted it on Twitter. And I put episode 21. So I'm just all over the place today. But we appreciate everybody coming back to check us out for another episode. I am here with my man Dylan Lydell as always. Dylan, how are you doing on this fine Thursday early evening? I can't quite call it afternoon right now.
No, yeah. Well, it's not raining outside and don't look like there's too many clouds. So, it could be worse. It could be worse. How are you doing? I'm doing good.
I'm doing really good, actually. I had a really, really long day. I have had a very, very, very busy week. It just, shit happens. Baseball season's coming, so I don't really get non-busy days anymore. But outside of that, it's just been a cool day, man.
Are you excited for this weekend?
Relaxing. As a Chiefs fan, you have no idea because I'm so excited. Very excited. If you don't know, I'm like probably the biggest Kansas City Chiefs fan you've ever met in real life. I watch them religiously. I scream so loud that I think my neighbors hate me every time it is game day. But Kansas City, the last few years, has kind of owned Lamar Jackson, so I don't have any reservations about this game. I know they're rolling. I know Lamar kind of took his game to another level this year. Their defense looks good, but like offensively, outside of Lamar, they're literally like just the same team as always. Like receivers.
Curious if Mark Andrews comes back, but their defense is a different beast. But man, like people weren't talking the same way about you guys and Mahomes this year. But it seems like whenever the playoffs hit, they just turn it up a notch and they just get in rhythm. Going into Baltimore, they're only like a 3-point underdog or whatever it is. And like that's a coin flip, essentially what it means. Like Mahomes he's unbelievable, man. You guys are so lucky. I could only wish we get somebody like that because he's one of the best of all time, like already.
Dude, what I was thinking about the other day was, so in 2013, the Kansas City Chiefs were so bad they had the number 1 overall pick.
That was
in the draft,
Fisher, wasn't it?
Yep. 10 years after that, they have now gone to 6 straight AFC Championship games.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, it feels so good to be me, and I don't even care. I as a lifelong Chiefs fan, I've been through the ups and downs. I've been through the terrible teams. I've been through the Chiefs teams that didn't even throw a touchdown pass to a receiver the entire year. I've been through all that, so I'm gonna enjoy this while I can.
We're kind of in the worst spot of mediocrity right now. This is like the worst spot to be in as a Seahawks fan. But enough football talk, man. I'm ready to dive into something else.
How about some baseball?
Yeah,
some baseball talk. That sounds like something good to dive into. This is going to be a fun episode. It is something that I think is a great entryway for folks maybe that want to try a new style of fantasy baseball. Maybe you're somebody that's played for a while. You play in category or rotisserie league normally. You're thinking about a points league. Maybe you're somebody that your fantasy football season sucked. Like you're just down in the dumps. You need something to pick you up. You need something to fill that football void. And you've heard that fantasy baseball has these points leagues that seem kind of cool and you want to try it out. Try it out. This is where it's at. Like points leagues in fantasy baseball are probably the quickest riser in popularity over the last couple of years. And for the simple reason that if you understand fantasy football, which everybody and their mother plays fantasy football nowadays, you can get a quick grasp on a fantasy baseball points league.
Yeah.
It's very simple. For hitters, you get a point per total base. What is that? A point per total base, a point for every run scored, a point for every RBI, a point for every walk. And then you get a point for every stolen base, and then you lose a point every time somebody's stealing, and you lose a point every time they strike out. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
This is just the basic points league settings. For pitchers, it's usually 1 point for every full inning they pitch, 1 point per strikeout, 2 or 5 points per win, depending on what platform you play on. But then it's minus 2 points for every earned run, minus a point for every walk, minus a point given up. So there tends to be, I don't know if I want to just get right into the checks. I was going to do it later, but there tends to be higher point totals out of pitchers every time they start, but they also only start every 5 days. So there's a little bit of a give and take there. Your best hitter in a day, say somebody goes say somebody goes 2 for 4 with 2 home runs and 4 RBI in a game, and they don't strike out. That's a 12 point. What's that going to be? 14. That's going to be a 14-point day for that player. If a pitcher throws a 7-inning shutout, gets a win and strikes out 9, that's going to be like a 26-point
Yeah.
day. So like a pitcher can have a tendency to get you more on a per game basis, but also they play a lot less games, only getting like 32, maybe 33 starts if they stay healthy for the full season. But I kind of just want to break it down step by step. I have an article coming out for Fantasy Pros. I did peek before we got into the recording to see if it had been scheduled to be published yet. It looks like it has been scheduled to be published. It'll likely be out. I keep catching myself saying this because I say this and then it doesn't happen. It should be out on Friday morning. There should be an episode, my Points League primer. And I kind of broke that down into tiers. And I think that's a good way to kind of take it step by step to really figure out the strategy behind a Points League. Dylan, last year was your first Points League experience for fantasy baseball.
It was.
How did you feel about it being your first Points League?
Yeah, all I've known is fantasy football to like a very casual extent, and the only time I had played fantasy baseball was probably back in high school, maybe when I was 14, 15 years old. And I remember it being and I know there's also different leagues where you have to set your lineups. Like there's the daily leagues, there's the weekly leagues. We played in a weekly league, and I think that was very easy and super nice to get into just because pretty straightforward. You didn't have to stress about setting your lineup every day. That's what I think drew me out of it when I was younger. Like just looking into it every single day, like the way I would fantasy football, which was maybe a couple times a week. Like I think I just got a little bit overwhelmed back then. The idea of a points league and it being a weekly lineup league, that was a lot of fun because there wasn't a whole lot of negatives. Like you were saying, there was only a couple ways you can get points detracted from you. It's strikeouts, get caught stealing, pitchers just giving up runs, hits, like stuff like that. So it's kind of easy to aim for players you want to get. Like you can get guys that just slap singles all day, power numbers. It's pretty easy to build a team. I enjoyed it a lot. Like it was a different experience. It felt a lot like fantasy football, which I love playing. I really do suggest people giving it a shot that haven't tried fantasy baseball. You do get to learn a lot about the low key named players. You do get to figure out who those guys are, and it just does keep you involved in the baseball season, like a lot of people do view the football season. Yeah, that was kind of my view on it. I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I like the point you made about it helps you kind of get in tune with more of the players and stuff. Because even if you're a casual baseball fan and you hop into like a fantasy baseball league, just in general, all of a sudden you catch yourself paying more attention to who's performing well, even like in the minor leagues. You catch yourself paying attention to the top 100 prospect lists and guys that are getting called up. You start paying attention to guys that Maybe we're swing guys on a team and are going to get maybe 2 weeks in the starting lineup because somebody's injured. And so you start keying in like, okay, is this somebody that can help me in my fantasy league? And all of a sudden you catch yourself on the MLB app watching that player's at bats just to see how they do because you want to watch it for yourself and not just check the box score. Like it casually progresses itself all the way through till all of a sudden you're like, I can name 15 Pittsburgh Pirates players, and I was just a casual Mariners fan before this. How the hell did that happen? It's a slippery slope, but it's a fun slope.
Yeah, and it's not to say that I was some sort of Mariners only casual fan. Like I know the game of baseball, but I guess to the analytics side, the side you come from, it's really opened that door for me. Exploring that avenue, and it's opened my eyes to a lot of different things. But yeah, just getting into stuff like that. But then yeah, learning more about those under the radar names like Luke Rayleigh. I probably wouldn't have been talking about him much had he not been a Mariner, to be honest. Or other names like around that caliber.
One that comes to mind for me is like a Michael Garcia for Kansas City. He's a very under the radar guy last year. He only got on my radar because of my Fantasy Pros weekly waiver wire articles I was writing.
Yeah.
He was under the radar, but he was performing so well that he was hard to overlook when you were like really digging into the analytics and things. And to give you guys a freebie, not that everything I put out isn't free for y'all, but to give you a freebie, Michael Garcia is somebody that you should target later in drafts. All the analysts absolutely love him coming into this year. I still absolutely love him coming into this year. He's got some sneaky pop. He's got good speed, and there's nobody that's going to take at bats from him in Kansas City this year. So he's somebody to keep an eye on. But as far as kind of a beginner's guide to points leagues goes, I think to make it easiest, we'll cover like the hitter side of things first, and then do the pitcher side of things after that. Because even though it is fairly simple, it does have that fantasy football feel to it. There are some nuances to a points league that will take you from a casual player to a really good player. Because depending on where you play, if you play in like an ESPN, we'll just use that for reference. If you play in like an ESPN points league, somebody that's averaging 2 points a game, they're going to be like an okay roster player. If they're averaging 2 points a game, that's kind of what you want to shoot for. If they're averaging under 2 points a game, they start to become a detriment to your team after a little while. If it's somebody like Ronald Acuna last year in ESPN points leagues, I think he averaged like 4 points a game or 4.5 points a game. Just absurd. 3 points a game is like these are these stud guys.
My first year, that was cool.
And he's going to be so much better this coming year too, I think. As crazy as that seems.
I'll pull up the app right now and see.
But the biggest key for a points league just right out of the gate, strikeouts.
Yes.
Strikeouts. So there's only 2 ways in your standard points league that you can lose points. If somebody gets caught stealing, that's minus a point. And if they strike out, that is minus a point. Prime example of a player that has a lot more value in a category or rotisserie style league than a points league is Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber last year hit 47 home runs, which I think was his career high or right around his career high. Scored 100 runs, drove in 100 runs. That is awesome in a category league. Kyle Schwarber also has struck out 415 times across the last 2 seasons, which is the most in baseball. And it's like 60 strikeouts more than the third place person. Suarez is second, which is only like 5 behind him. But like that is a lot. That's a lot of negative points. I think he struck out 208 times last year, 210 times last year. So for as good as 47 home runs, 100 runs scored, 100 RBIs is, all of a sudden you're cutting out 210 points right off the top of that. And that dropped Kyle Schwarber down into like the 50 range for how good of a player he was at the end of the year. That's not the kind of value you expect when you're drafting and you see, oh my God, this dude was like top 5 in home runs in all of baseball last year. You think somebody like that becomes a good pick, but you need to keep in mind that those strikeouts are such a crucial thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one thing to look at when identifying a player, obviously you can just look at the raw strikeout number, but just the raw number can be a little misleading. K percentage
Mm-hmm.
is what you want to be checking.
What about OBP? I like that one too for points league.
I do like OBP because it gets the walks in there too, which
Yeah.
helps, which does tend to help Schwarber a little more because he hits under 200, but he has like a 330 OBP, so it's a manageable OBP. So that's good. The higher walk rate comes with that, which is great. Just even for how good and your on base percentages though, K rate can kill that.
Mm-hmm.
And what you really want to target, as straightforward and obvious as it seems, is the lowest K rate possible. Luis Arias is the prime example for that. In a categories league, Luis Arias last year got you a good batting average. That's what he got you. He didn't hit you a bunch of home runs. He didn't score a bunch of runs. He doesn't really steal bases, and he's not driving anybody in. But he only struck out, I think, 7% of the time last year, or 8% of the time last year, which ended up with him being a top 6 second baseman in fantasy baseball points leagues last year. So for somebody as unappealing in a categories league as Luis Arias is, he becomes a top option in a points league. If they strike out, what would you say a high strikeout rate would be? Probably 28%.
Yeah, if you're pushing 27, 28 was yeah, that's what I was about to say.
That's why I would start to get nervous. Anything under 20%, I love. Absolutely love it. There's the outliers.
25, I would probably say, is the first red flag.
Yeah, and guys right around that 25. I think Ohtani, Austin Riley, and Julio are like 24%. So they're right around there. So they're a little higher than that under 20% you want, but they also like give you batting average, power, RBI, still like they give you everything. So yeah, under 25, okay. Under 20, great. Lower than that is the sweet spot to a certain extent. They gotta do something with that low strikeout rate. Somebody else with a low strikeout rate, Stephen Kwan.
I was just about to bring him up too. Yeah,
he was somebody on your sleepers list, I think, this year.
He plays on points teams for sure. Mm-hmm. Just because that low strikeout rate, he's not going to carry the average Luis Arias does, but he's not going to strike out, and that's one of the main things that takes points away from you as a hitter is the strikeouts. So, and he doesn't do that.
Yeah, he gets pretty appealing with that like probably hit like 270. Yeah, and he scores. He knocks on the door of 100 runs every year. So when that low strikeout rate with the high run scored and good batting average, that's the makings of a good points league guy. And the crazy thing is Stephen Kwan last year, he finished right in the range of like for overall last year, right in the range of Trey Turner, Christian Yelich, Kyle Schwarber, and Adolis Garcia. He was literally in that mix of 5 guys right there at the end of the year.
Well, I mean,
unassumable Stephen Kwan.
Trey Turner's last 2 months really saved his season, so I'm not really surprised to hear him in that kind of range.
I like seeing him up there, though, because I think he does get overlooked quite a bit just because in fantasy baseball, the boring hitters can sometimes be the better hitters. Less flashy, but consistent. That gives you that safe floor. Mm-hmm. And then next would be probably, I shouldn't say probably. Next would be like contact rate. Guys with the high contact rate, obviously that lends kind of into the low strikeout rate. So guys with the good contact rate are going to give you good points leagues numbers. Obviously, if you want to use a great example, Mookie Betts had like the top 5 zone contact rate this year. Mm-hmm. That's probably my favorite contact rate out there. I don't generally like overall contact rate because that kind of combines that zone contact with all the shitty pitches they swing at outside of the zone, which can give you some weird numbers. I don't care if a guy does or doesn't have the ability to make contact on a pitch that's 2 feet outside the zone. That doesn't really matter to me because even if he gets the bat on the ball, it's not going to be great contact, so it doesn't really matter. I love zone contact. If a guy can hit a ball that is thrown over the strike zone, that's important. So a high zone percentage or zone contact rate is what you're looking for there. Does overall contact rate matter to you at all, or are you more of a zone contact rate kind of person?
Well, I think that they're both good, but I think zone contact rate might make a bit more sense to me. You're going after pitches in the strike zone, which are the pitches you want to swing at. I don't know if contact rate necessarily shows you swinging at good pitches like zone contact rate might. So I'd probably side with zone contact rate just because they might have the better eye and swinging at better pitches. You'll get rewarded for that at the end, I think.
Yeah, there was somebody that I was looking at for my article, and there's times where you kind of just know, like, okay, like this person has a good zone contact rate, so I can work them into the article because I know they do, and then I'll just grab their zone contact rate at the end and slip it in there so people can get an idea of where I'm coming from. And I did that. I don't remember who the player was, which sucks. I wrote up like a whole thing about it, and then I looked up his zone contact rate, and it was like 72% or something. And I was like, what in the censor myself. And I had to go back in and delete the whole thing because I was like, that is not what I expected that number to be. Like, I was thinking it was going to trend more towards like 85, 86%. And I would be like, all right, cool. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But one bit of research that I've been doing lately that I think I found a strong correlation between that and points league production is over on Pitcher List. They have some proprietary stats over there that you can only find there. One is ideal plate appearances. It takes barrels. Oh, geez, see if I can remember. It takes barrels, flares and burners, and something else, puts them together, combines it by a number of plate appearances, and it shows you how many essentially like quality at bats they take. And the guys that are higher up or that had the higher ideal plate percentage or plate appearance percentage, it's a mouthful, actually tend to be the guys that excel in a points league. Somebody like Luis Camposano randomly was the number one. He didn't have that many at bats last year, but he's been a sneaky catcher pick this year, and he is the number one hitter in terms of ideal plate appearances last year. Guys like I think Bo Bichette is up there. Yainer Diaz is up there.
I liked him last year.
Dominic Canzone secretly is not really secretly, but he's sneaky up there too. He's in the top 10, which would be pretty crazy.
Dammy.
And this guy like Acuna's up there. I think Stephen Kwan's up there. It's like a lot of these guys that excel in a points league tend to be higher on that list. So you might be able to use that kind of rolling leaderboard throughout the year to keep an eye on guys like waiver wire guys and such that could be great, because it's not a stat that needs a ton of at bats for you to get like an idea of whether or not they're going to be good in that area or not. You can take a 20 at bat or 30 at bat sample size, and that's going to apply to a bigger chunk. So keep that in mind. You can find that over on Pitcher List. It is ideal plate appearance percentage, IPA percent. It always makes me think of beer every time I look at it. And then after that, total bases matter. There's probably never been a day in your life as a baseball fan where you thought, I wonder how many total bases somebody has. But you need to in a points league because it's important. That's how you get your points. And a thing that often goes overlooked in a points league is, or I guess in like a category or rotisserie league, is doubles and triples. Very often go overlooked, even singles. Essentially, home runs are king. Batting average is cool. Doubles and triples don't matter as much because it still just counts as a hit in a rotisserie or category league. But in a points league, you get 1 point per base. So a triple, all of a sudden, that's 3 points. A double, that's 2 points. And the first person that comes to mind for me, like a total base, like a sneaky guy for this year, is a Jaron Duran of Boston. There was a point last year where he wasn't even a qualified hitter because he didn't have enough at bats, and he still led baseball in doubles.
Damn. Yeah.
Like, that's something that will often get overlooked in a fantasy baseball setting, but in a points league, that shoots him up that board of relevance, because if he's coming up there, I think when he was leading, he had like 34 doubles or something, and it was 2 doubles more than the next person. Wasn't even a qualified hitter. So keying in on guys that are just great at extra bases helps. I think slugging percentage is a great tool, not really tool, a great analytic to use, just a pretty simple one for finding guys that are better with the extra base hits. Is there anything you could think of that might be a good indicator for extra base hits, or
Ooh, for extra base
probably
hits.
stick to slugging percentage?
Slugging percentage, yeah, that might be the easiest way, just because it's on the back of a baseball card. It's pretty easy for everybody to find. It's very accessible. So, just as like an easy indicator, like I said, a beginner's way or a beginner's guide of getting into it, I think slugging percentage would be a good indicator. But I'm sure we can, or you can lead us into some more advanced analytics that would indicate otherwise.
One interesting thing that I found when I was doing my research was my initial thought process was slugging percentage would be a good one. And what I found is guys with a slugging percentage of 470 or higher tend to be obviously higher up the not just the extra base hits leaderboard, but the total bases board, which it would be more important for this. But I thought there was going to be a correlation between slugging percentage and higher sprint speed that would kind of make the faster guys stand out in the total base department. I couldn't find any good correlation between sprint speed and total bases, which kind of surprised me, because I thought these faster guys are going to leg out more doubles, they're going to leg out more triples, they're going to get you more extra bases, more total bases. It didn't work out the way I thought. So, I mean, maybe that's not as surprising to some, but sprint speed doesn't really matter as much. I think off the top of my head, if I remember correctly, there was 5 guys in the top 20 and had a sprint speed of 29 feet per second or higher, which is what you would consider pretty good sprint speed. Only 5 in the top 20. So if you're thinking like maybe this guy's got some wheels, so he might be able to leg out a couple more extra base hits for me this week, I don't think it's something that you really need to pay as much attention to, because I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference over the course of a year, because in 2023 it did not.
Man, I don't know. Excuse me. It could, just like thinking why that maybe could be just like guys being set up in the right spots on defense to where they can't outleg those extra base hits, and pitching just being at an all-time high at, pitching being the best it's ever been. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it was one of those stats that I found that I was like, it really interested me, because I go into a lot of these things kind of, again, already having an idea of like, okay, this is going to be this way, this is how this is going to work, this, all of that, just because I tend to do so much research over the time that you just kind of accumulate the things. And then when I made the custom leaderboard on Baseball Savant, which can be so fun to do, to kind of compare and contrast things. I made the custom leaderboard, and I slowly started to realize like it's not working out the way I thought it was going to work out. I was very surprised. But on the hitter side, that's essentially what you're looking for. You want a high zone contact guy with a good slugging percentage, with a sub 20% strikeout rate. That's going to be the makings of like a really good fantasy player. Again, it's important to know your league rules. It's important to know your league setup, so you know what is and isn't good. But then on the pitcher side of things, it just kind of loops right back around to strikeouts right out of the gate. And probably the most effective, how good are they at pitching tool you can use? I guess not most effective, but like the most bare bones, if you want to get a good grasp, is K minus walk percentage. K percentage is cool. K minus walk percentage is better, especially in a fantasy baseball points league, because strikeouts are worth points. Walks are minus points, so strikeout minus walk percentage is great. The elite guys in baseball tend to be above 20% for a K minus walk percentage. So say they strike out 30% of their batters and they walk 10% of them, they would have a 20% K minus walk rate. That's kind of how that works. When you're drafting, this probably goes just in general in any league, points league specifically, I want you to focus on getting 2 pitchers with a K minus walk rate of 20% or higher. Now, there's only a handful. I think there's 15 of them last year, 12 of them, 15. I want you to focus on getting 2 of those guys, because over the course of the year, that is going to pay you back tenfold. Guys in that category would be a Spencer Strider, would be a Garrett Cole. Luis Castillo fell into that range. It would be a Kevin Gossman. It would be a God, who else was up there? Pablo Lopez, guys like that. And that'll pay off tenfold. Now, after that, if you do get the 20 percenters or higher, those are going to quickly go away because there's not many. You want to shoot for guys. I think, shout out John Anderson on Twitter. He puts out a ton of in-depth stats. I think he said the most common K minus walk rate over the last, I think he did 10 years, was 14%. So ideally, you want to try and find guys that are 15% or higher. Will be a pretty good fantasy baseball points league pitcher, as long as they have a manageable ERA. I like to think 17% or higher is like, that's what you want to target. You want to shoot higher. Go there. Have you thought much about K minus walk rate when it comes to evaluating pitchers in general? And if so, do you think it's something that is of that much importance for fantasy baseball pitchers next year?
It's not something I'd ever paid attention to, but it's something I'm definitely going to look at going into next year when we finally get started. Yeah, I like you said, the guys, excuse me, jeez, the guys that are in that category of that 20% range, like those are the elite pitchers in the game. So right, it's a good indication on what to target and how to target it. Just out of because George Kirby, he didn't strike out. He wouldn't fall into that list, would he? Because he didn't strike
He
out
would
that.
not.
Yeah, he didn't strike out that many guys. I mean, the walks wouldn't be an issue, but it would just be the strikeouts. Yeah, so yeah, I think it's a good tool to look at what can get you not the best bang for your buck, but like what can get you the best value in where you're drafting pitchers. Like, for instance, if you're looking at a group of pitchers and you think about taking one, maybe just look at their numbers real quick. It's not that hard to find. You just got to pull it up online. Savant should have them always available. You just got to look at K rate, walk rate, plus minus, bam, you got it. So if there's somebody that just doesn't make sense right there, maybe you pass and wait. I don't know. Yeah, I might got to go through that and look at these guys and see how it all lands.
Yeah, I think George Kirby, I could be fucking this up. I think he's around 18%. Because he's still his if you look at Ks per 9, which I'm not a big fan of, it's not a very good indicator of success for a pitcher. His Ks per 9 is only like 8.5 or somewhere right around there. But it's because he walks so few batters that he sees a fewer percentage of hitters. So his Ks per 9 number is not going to be as high, even though his K percentage is a little higher. So I think he's in like the 18% range. So he is in that range that like you really want to target.
Yeah, that sounds right. That's what around that just under 20% mark is what I thought he was around.
And then after that, this one is an interesting one because a lot of leagues are trending more towards just the generic pitcher position for fantasy baseball. It is something that I like because in fantasy baseball points leagues, closers are, I'm not going to say irrelevant, but unless you are Emmanuel Clase, Hader, Devin Williams, like those couple guys, unless you're like the elite of the elite of the elite best closers, they're not rosterable on your team. I hate to break it to you. They pitch so few and far between a lot of the times. It's very unpredictable when they will actually get in games and when they won't. So your focus needs to be on starting pitchers. But on the off chance you do play in those older format leagues that have, say, you have to start 2 relief pitchers and then 5 starting pitchers. The SPRP eligible guys, or I think the Fantasy Baseball Today guys call them SPARP pitchers, guys that are both starting pitcher and relief pitcher eligible become your best friend for those spots because then you can sneak in starting pitchers into your relief pitcher spot. That would be guys like a Nick Pivetta, Louis Varland, who I loved last year and I still like this year. Keep an eye on Louis Varland as a later round pitcher. Others would be Cutter Crawford, who has been quite the name in Mariners land. There was a weird back and forth with Boston Red Sox Twitter there for a while where everybody was comparing Cutter Crawford to Logan Gilbert, which made no sense. But Cutter Crawford should be on your radar regardless. I'm just kind of spitting all my thoughts right now. He should be on your radar because the head of Driveline took a job with the Boston Red Sox this year for pitcher development. So he's going to be working with them. Cutter Crawford has some nasty stuff in general. So even though he's kind of underperformed his numbers, there's some upside there. And he's SPRP eligible, which is important. Sean Manaea also falls into that category. Jose Urquidy, Garrett Whitlock, Matt Strom. Matt Strom tends to be more of like the RP side of that, though. So yeah, to focus in on starting pitchers. Don't fall for the flashy relievers, because again, outside of those top guys, you're gonna get screwed more weeks than you're not, because you could throw like Andres Munoz out there, just to use a Mariner for reference. And he might get 1 save in a week. Saves are worth 5 points. Wins are usually worth 2. The 5 points is cool, but if he goes 1 inning with 2 strikeouts, gives up no hits, no walks, no runs, and gets a save, that's like 9 points. That means that you just used a pitcher spot on somebody that's getting you 9 points for the entire week.
And that's a bad start from a starter.
Yeah. So you want to pay attention to something like that. Is as cool as it may seem, like, oh my God, I got the starting pitcher for a decent team in Major League Baseball. It's not worth the headache. You can stream pitchers, which is a very common thing to do in fantasy baseball. You can stream starting pitchers, just grab guys off the waivers that are going to have a favorable matchup, and they will likely outperform your kind of middle class of the relievers over the course of the year. And I mean, is there anything that I'm missing right now that you can think of?
So I guess what kind of got me through last year was just using the filter on ESPN. That's what you and I played on last year.
Mm-hmm.
It was just baseball's a game of being hot and cold, and finding streamers that might have just had a good last 14 days or the last 30 days and just seeing their points averages on that. I found a couple of guys like that helped me out in the long run. Royce Lewis was one of them. Picked him up right before he was on his Grand Slam run. But I mean, it was just little things like that. So that was what I guess helped me get me in the right direction last year was just finding guys that were hot at the right time, just using that filter. And then for starting pitching, I only played in a weekly league last year, but I saw this as kind of a cheese was you'll have your main starters, you'll have your aces, you'll have your starting pitcher 2, 3, but
Mhm.
then on the back end of your rotation, you may want to find guys that can get you 2 starts in a week.
Mhm.
That's where I was. I mean, it's not something I had ever thought of going into last year, but it's something I'm going to have my eye on this year. I saw you doing it, a couple other experienced players doing it. It's a really good idea because you can all of a sudden turn 10, 15 points for an average start, but then he gets to roll back out there at the end of the week and then pitches the gem. That guy just got you 40, 45 points in the week. So,
Mhm.
yeah, those are a couple things that I would look for.
Yeah, especially if you find guys that are going to have 2 great starts for the week. I was loving some of the games last year where like Brian Wu for a while there was a streamer worthy pitcher, not really like full roster worthy, but streamable pitcher in the weeks where he would like pitch against Oakland on Monday and then face the Angels on
Yeah, stuff like
Saturday.
that. Stuff
Oh,
like that. Right.
stuff like that is amazing because the points that they can score, like a really good pitcher in a points league can get you 35 points if they pitch an absolute gem. If they do that twice in a week, they're 70 points.
That's
Not
fingers crossed, but right. You figure you just get one average good start and then you get a gem, right? You're sitting around 45, 50 points, whatever it is.
mm-hmm.
You'll take you that's what you want. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, and a good thing that you want to, or a good thing to keep in mind when streaming, especially in a points league, just try and stream for quality starts. Wins are such a weird stat in baseball in general that it can be tough to go into streaming thinking like this dude is going to win these 2 games, so I need to pick him. You should be just looking for guys where it's like, all right, he can go out there and he can get me 6 innings, a 2-run ball with 5 strikeouts in this first game, and he could probably do the same in the second game, maybe 6 innings, 3 earned runs, 5, 6 strikeouts. If you get that in your 2 starts from your streamer, boom, boom, you just lock down a great lineup spot for you for that week, which is awesome. Now, keep in mind, it can go just as bad. If a pitcher has like a really, really, really bad start, they can go
Yes,
negative.
there is another side to all of this.
So they can
Yes.
go negative. So you need to keep that in mind. Don't just stream a pitcher to stream a pitcher, because if they go out on Monday and pull
Yeah,
a Brian Wu and go
you
2 innings
see
with 7 runs,
yeah, you see at Houston, go on the road at Dodgers, probably don't want to do it, people.
yeah, because all of a sudden you could get. I think somebody last year streamed and got negative 50 points out of one of their pitchers.
And that is the last thing you want to have happen.
Yeah, you're going to lose that week if you get
Mhm.
negative 50 points out of one of your spots. Because in reality, if you score 300 points for that week in like a standard points league, you scoring 300 points, that's a pretty good week. You're probably going to
Yep.
win. When a sixth of that all of a sudden is gone
And then
because you picked a bad starter, you
250, you just better hope.
you got to pray at that point.
Yeah.
But this has been a lot of fun.
As always.
Yeah, I love doing these episodes. Kind of more. These are kind of more of a free form episode than like we got these locked in. We're gonna talk about this dude, this dude, this dude, this dude, and I kind of like these free formed one because my brain goes a mile a minute sometimes, and I have a lot more to say than what I have planned to talk about, and so I got to cut myself off. But in these, we just kind of get to talk. Shout out everybody in the lives. We added YouTube to the list of places we are going live. So if you guys want to follow us over on there, you can check us out live, and all of the episodes are uploaded there after the live is over. So you can go watch the video content of this. Also, we're also on Facebook and Twitter. We're at Fake Baseball on YouTube and Twitter. Just search the Fake Baseball Podcast on Facebook. You'll find us there. You can catch me on Twitter at Balake, BUHHLOCKAYE. You can catch Dylan at DLydell_09. and we will catch you guys next Tuesday.